Welcome to the Grace and Grit podcast. I am your host, Courtney Townley. I'm so happy you're here. And I'm thrilled to welcome back a very special guest today, Steph Gaudreau. Steph is on a mission to help athletic midlife women build strong bodies and fitness that lasts for decades to come. She is a strength and sports nutrition coach. She is the host of the Fuel Your Strength podcast. She also happens to be a BJJ black belt. Welcome to the Grace and Grit podcast, made for women who want their healthiest years to be ahead of them, not behind them. Join your host, Courtney Townley, right now as she breaks down the fairy tale health story you have been chasing all of your life into sensible action steps and lasting change. It's been 6 years since I last had Steph on the show, so this is long overdue. And I'm really excited to dive into this conversation because in it, Steph really shares her evolution as a coach, as a business owner, and as a woman. She is also very generous in this conversation about her expertise on strength training for women and her own journey with learning new skills as a form of self-care and growth. We're going to discuss everything from permission to pivot in life to practical tips around strength training and nutrition for women in their middle years. This conversation is packed with wisdom for anyone looking to make bold moves in life, build strength that lasts, and expand their capacity for growth through learning new skills. So if that sounds good to you, stick around because that's where we're headed. Let's get to it. Steph Gaudreau, welcome to the Grace and Grit podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for being here. How's San Diego?
The usual.
What is the usual for people who don't live there?
I'm bracing for, normally by this time in the summer, it's pretty hot and it still isn't. And I am terrified that when the hot weather finally comes, it's just going to be continuous through November. So bracing for it. But, you know, we do live in a pretty amazing climate. So I can't complain compared to other places in the country.
I've never been royally hot in San Diego, but I've also not been there at all times of the year. So I'll just take your word for it.
We do have times where it's over 100 and that's even fairly close to downtown, you know, so not out, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm welcoming you back to the Grace and Grit podcast because you were actually here in 2019. Can you believe is that long ago?
No, time flies so fast.
Time flies so fast. So there's a few reasons I wanted to have you back on the show. Like, number one, I'm always looking for guests who obviously have nuggets of wisdom to offer the audience, but also have some examples from their own life about giving themselves permission to evolve and grow. And I definitely have seen that exemplified through you. So I'm excited to talk about some of that. Obviously, I want to pick your brain around strength and nutrition, specifically for kind of midlife women and what they're getting wrong and where they're confused and just helping to give them a little support on that front. And then also the power of learning new skills, because this is also something I think that you exemplify really well. And it's something that I often talk a lot about with my clients because there's this mentality at midlife that we're like too old to take on new things, which is crazy. And so I want to dive into all of that with you. So I hope that sounds good because that's where we are headed.
I like it. A nice mix of things.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start with your evolution because I think it's a great way to introduce listeners to you and to your work who may not know you or be familiar with you. Maybe just talking about the work that you do in the world today and how you got here.
Yeah. Okay, I'll try to make this succinct.
Yeah, I know that's a loaded question. I do get that.
So I currently coach women over 40 in strength training and performance nutrition. I podcast, do everything associated with all of that. But at the heart of it all, I'm coaching virtually most of the time. So that's kind of what I do. But how I got here is kind of a twisty, long road. I started off as a food blogger when I moved into working full-time as an entrepreneur. And then that quickly evolved into also including things that were related to strength training. Yes. And I was also strength training at that point and had been. So that's always been a through line throughout everything I've done. But I started off food blogging. And before that, my first career was as a high school science teacher. So I taught high school chemistry and biology for 12 years prior to then leaving the classroom and then going into kind of the virtual classroom in what I do today.
Yeah. So those two pretty pivotal moments, right? Like moving from science teacher to food blogger, right? That was a pretty big transition. And then again, moving from food blogger into the work that you're doing now. Like, did you rumble with giving yourself permission to make those shifts? Like, did you kind of delay the decision because it's something you wanted to do, but you also maybe didn't feel ready to make it?
1,000,000%. I'm somebody I've got two speeds. I'll either mull on something that I know I really want to do.
Yeah.
But I maybe don't have the guts to do it right away.
Yep.
Oftentimes there is some amount of strategy in that, and I'll mention a couple things regarding that. But the other way I do things is I will just do it. Yeah. So if I know it feels right and I'm ready, I'm just going to go. I'm just going to do the thing. So I say most of that though it's probably about 80% just absolutely make myself sick with thinking about, should I, shouldn't I, shouldn't I? And then I'll finally do it. And I'm like, I should have done this a long time ago. And I finally rip off the Band-Aid and do it. It's about 20% of the time I'll just jump in. But with leaving teaching, for example, I knew about 2 years prior that I wanted to try my hand at being an online entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Before I ever quit. So my food blog goes back to 2009. I mean, we're talking about, I was putting recipes on a blog.
Yes.
And that turned into my first blog in 2011. And so I had 2 years between when I first started Stupid Easy Paleo and then I actually left the classroom. It was almost 2 years. And in that time I was preparing, right? I was taking courses, I was learning, I was doing recipes on the side, on the weekend, whenever I had time, and seeing, was this actually something I wanted to do? So it was, and then I had to ask for a leave of absence from my job and actually do the thing. And that was a whole process. I had to write a petition to the school board. I worked for a very large district here in Southern California. And it's not like I didn't know anybody on the board. I had to write a letter. I had to get my principal's permission. A whole bunch of things went into that actually happening. And they granted me the leave of absence for a year. And I said, okay, at least I have a fail-safe. I can come back.
Yeah.
So that was a whole thing. And it really took a while. You know, when I rebranded from Stupid Easy Paleo to my name now, which is just stephgaudreau.com. And I decided I was going to move into more of a performance base of nutrition that was less attached to any one dietary way of eating. That change was a couple years in the making as well.
Yeah. And
so some things I feel like, yes, preparation and planning things out and deciding switching a business over, there's a lot of steps. There's a lot of things to consider. And part of me thought, okay, I just need to make sure this is really what I want to do. And part of me was afraid of what would happen. What would happen if I changed things and I moved in a different direction? And for a long time, not a lot of people know this, but for a long time, I actually had 2 websites. I had both of them. I had Stupid Easy Paleo and I had Steph Gaudreau, and I was trying to post on both and keep them separated. And I had 2 Instagrams.
Jeez, you were doing a lot of work. Yeah.
And I just kept thinking how split I felt.
Yeah.
And I'd say, does this go here or does this go there? And certainly depending on the person and the businesses they have, and if they're completely unrelated, it might make sense to have them separated. At the end of the day, I was like, this is me trying to separate myself into 2 entities, and I just need to put it all together. Yeah. So I tried to do it separate for a while to see if that was the right step for me, and it ended up not being. And so, in a way, did it probably, I don't want to use the word set me back, but did it delay the thing that was probably inevitable? Yeah. But it taught me a lot at the same time. I learned a lot of things from just the process of, managing 2 major social media accounts and creating content for both and trying to keep them from merging was just not practical. So yeah, a lot of times I will just really noodle on things probably too long until I feel like I have okay, it's become unbearable now, and I'm going to make the decision.
Yes, I can totally relate to that. Yeah. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because like with the science position, your science teacher position, you really kind of used it as a bridge job to kind of dip your toe in the waters you were really interested in, and you did it in a really safe way. And then I hear with like your jump from stupid easy paleo to the strength and nutrition work that you're doing now, you were willing to experiment with what worked and what didn't, and eventually you cut loose stupid easy paleo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We set it off into the sunset.
You set it off into the sunset. I love it. So what would you say to a woman who might be listening to this, who is really feeling compelled to move her life in a direction that she's given a lot of thought to, and she's just in that position of there is always uncertainty. We don't know how it's going to turn out. Like, what would your words of wisdom be to that person?
Yeah, I think that was something that I really relied on the people in my life that knew me well and I trusted. The people I would go to for advice and bouncing ideas off of, and really thinking about, and kudos to all of those important people for reminding me that there's also a good side to the what if coin. And our natural human tendency is to think, what's going to go bad? What's going to go wrong? And what could I fail at? And that makes sense. We have a negativity bias, and it's kept us alive for all of these millennia.
So many years.
Yeah. And has allowed us to persist. But at the same time, sometimes that negativity bias and our fears and those sorts of things will keep us from making the decision because we forget about all of the potential good things that could open up to us. I would say too, it's important to think about your values and what is fundamental for you as a person. And oftentimes core values don't shift all that much, but you might not have really sat down to think about your core values in the context of making something like a career move or a change in your relationship or any other big change that you're thinking of making in life. And so thinking about you now, you as a 20-year-old, probably you were thinking about things through a very different lens. And a lot of times we don't take the time to reassess what's important to us based on our life sort of now or where we want to go with things. And so we're very stuck in the past. And not so much thinking about the present or what would serve us best now. And then I would say also, who is the person I want to become? What kind of person do I want to become in this way? Sort of an identity-focused decision. If values-focused doesn't resonate as much as sort of, well, who's the person I'm trying to become with this decision? And does it match? Do I have a really, I guess I would say, idealized version of that? Or am I thinking about it more realistically? Because we are all drawn to things that are very idealized and sound perfect, but also considering along with the decision, what are some of the challenges that could come my way? And if I am driving toward a different identity or a different piece of my identity, also thinking about the things that could potentially go wrong and making sure I'm not just thinking about when it's perfect or this is the perfect outcome. So it is kind of both, right? I said it earlier, negativity bias. We don't want to only live in that, but we also want to think about what is aspirational or what are we moving toward and thinking about here and now and where we want to go with things, not just what I did 20 years ago. I think that was really helpful for me in a lot of ways.
I love that. What do you think the cost would have been to not give yourself permission to pivot?
Ooh. I think I would have kept wondering what would have happened. What if I didn't take the chance on me? And I do think that not knowing, of course, we always have, we can't do everything, right? And so we have FOMO, but we also have the joy of missing out on things that we don't want to do. Or we know are just not interesting to us. And so I think there's that element of, yes, I don't want to miss out on the things that could be for me, but also I can also think that I don't need to try to do everything in my life. And I think when those two things, you have a clearer sense of, if I don't do this thing, I'm going to maybe feel like what could have happened? What absolutely. If? And having the fail safe of being able to go back to my job. So they hired a year-long permanent sub. That helped massively. So I think having fail safes or having safety nets, if you can give you the courage for that. And so that gave me the opportunity to say, I don't have to wonder what if. I can go try it. I think if I had, to be quite honest, I think if I had to make the decision between quitting outright and losing the ability to go back to my job and not, staying with what I was doing, I probably would have kept going and kept teaching.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it would have been too scary for me. So I think the cost of not making the decision would be in the wondering what if, the thinking, what could I have created with this thing that I'm feeling really called to do?
Yeah.
And I do think sometimes we don't value that as much in society.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking about, we're always talking about being productive, and certainly as a business owner, you have to think about being productive, but it was more this idea to go create something in the world. And I think that's very valuable. It doesn't always have to be a hard, like, numbers crunching sort of thing. Like, I would lose out on this income, or I would lose out on whatever, I think for me, it was, I had a vision of something I thought I could do, and could I do that thing? And that challenge has always kind of kept me going.
Yeah. I mean, you come across to me as the type of person who, no matter what setting you're in, you're probably going to rise to the occasion and continue to grow. But there's also an element in what you're saying where it does sound like it would have stunted your growth on some level to not go out and create and pursue these things that were pulling at your heartstrings.
Yeah.
But I also think it's such a great reminder that you're giving listeners that there are ways to do it that don't feel as risky or terrifying. And a lot of times we aren't discussing those because what we see online is people overhauling their life or making these massive changes. And while that absolutely can work for some people, for other people, it completely jacks up their nervous system to the point of almost feeling paralyzed because it is so terrifying. So maybe just looking, having, like you had mentioned, friends and family helping you to explore options and have those levels of support back you up.
Yeah, there was a workshop I went to a long time ago, and the woman's name is Rhonda Britton. And the thing I took away from that workshop that I still talk about with some clients is this idea. I'm a very risk-averse person, to be quite honest, in most cases. But a lot of us think of, we have a comfort zone and we're either in it or out of it. And
there's no in between, right?
Right. So you have this thing that's terrifying to you. And then you have this thing as where you are right now. And so you think, well, of course, my lizard brain is trying to keep me from being too stressed out or feeling too anxious, or the fear is just too great. And so I'm going to stay where I am. And I think there is something incredible about your comfort zone. Yes. We shouldn't demonize that. And so that kind of goes to your point of if I feel like this is going to blow up my life and I'm worried to the point that I'm feeling sick about it, and it doesn't feel good, it doesn't feel like, ooh, this is exciting and I get to try this out. It feels like I feel like I'm in imminent danger and it's not going away. That's probably not the most drastic step that you could take. What's a smaller step? And so this idea that I learned from her is that there are levels between, there's levels between the comfort zone and the thing that you feel like is going to make you want to die because it feels too scary. Yes. And sort of when you step outside of that and nudge outside of that little by taking smaller steps, you then kind of expand your comfort zone expands, basically. Your tolerance for those scary things gets a little bit better, and then you're still moving forward toward maybe the big scary thing that you want to do. So I think there's absolutely something to be said for being strategic, making smart decisions, taking smaller steps, creating sub goals, doing things little by little, doing things on the side, and not to get caught up in things like hustle culture or bro culture. People who are like, just quit. And it's like, well, it's not quite that easy when you're middle-aged and you've got a lot more responsibilities or things you have to consider in this big life-altering decision that you're about to make. It's okay to take smaller steps and chunk it up, and that's fine too. There's nothing wrong with that.
And just segueing into the work you do now, I think that's especially true too of women who maybe understand the value of something like strength training, right? Like building a practice of it, starting to dip their toe into that pool, but also just feeling completely overwhelmed by maybe the types of things they see online or the level of leanness they think they need to attain or whatever the case may be. So let's talk a little bit about the work that you do now, because I think it's so obviously so relevant to my audience. But the first thing I want to ask you is how do you define strength? Because you promote strength. How do you define it?
Well, I think I would say in a physical sense, right?
Yeah.
It's your ability to create force and move an object or move yourself against the ground, and you're carrying that object or whatever. So it's a physical expression of being able to move something because you've created force. So that definition, unless you're a physicist or a nerd, probably doesn't excite you. You're like, oh, I'm going to create force and move a heavy object. Like, ooh, that sounds
I like the physical
boring.
expression part though. Like that.
I think what we consider strength as a concept and sort of how we talk about it more loosely is our ability to interact in the world. If I'm being more conceptual, like doing things in the world that we have as a goal and allow us to live into a bigger expression of ourselves. And that might sound kind of esoteric, but
I love it.
For some people, strength is the ability to hike up a mountain and do a hike that they've always wanted to do. And certainly there's endurance to that and all sorts of things that we know, but building your strength might be an important piece of that. For other people, it might be signing up for an event and training for that event. Maybe it's not even a race, so it's just a casual 5K or something where there's a reason for you to train.
Yeah.
You have to be able to move your body, and being able to do that with strength in integrity in your tissues, so you don't increase your risk of injury, and you're able to complete it and ultimately feel like you did your best. And that to me is what that physical manifestation of strength.
I love that so much. And I love the way you said it initially, which is to live into a bigger expression of ourselves. Like that's so good. Because it's not like strength training just to strength train. It's strength training because there's so much possibility and expansion on the other side.
Absolutely.
And so I love that so much. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about like why strength training specifically for the midlife female population is especially potent.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always trying to be mindful of, I think you said this earlier, right? Where we always think we're too old, it's too late, we can't make a change. And so I think about that, and to kind of reverse engineer it is like, we're going to start with the idea that there is very good news here. And that is,
I love it,
is that it's never too late. It's never too late to increase your strength, to build muscle, to improve your power, to have better balance.
Yeah.
Right. All of these elements that we know are so important. So it's never too late. And that should sound like a great thing, because it's like, okay, yes, we want to acknowledge that if we don't train our muscle, we don't build muscle, we don't increase our strength, that we will start to see those things decline as we age. Mm-hmm. And we know that older people move less and meet the exercise guidelines less than younger people. Mm-hmm. We have that data. So we don't want to focus too much on the fact that we could see declines in muscle mass. We will lose power. So you might feel like you can't move as quickly. Your balance might deteriorate. We don't want to focus too much on the negatives, but we want to also acknowledge them and say, but hey, these things can happen, but we can absolutely do something about that.
Yeah.
And that is lifting weights at least a couple times a week, right? So 2 times a week is our exercise minimum guidelines, doing some resistance training, and then of course doing the cardio aspect as well, right, for conditioning. And so we have better endurance and stamina. So it's really important because midlife, we've got this, I mean, this time is crazy.
Oh,
I feel like no one talks about this, how hard it is. And I'm thinking of even my clients. Okay. So for example, my clients are mostly in their 40s and early 50s.
Yeah.
Some of them still have little kids, and I'm talking 2 years old, 5 years old. Some of them have kids that are about to graduate and leave the house. So they're about to become empty nesters. Several of my clients are caretaking for their parents or other older adults in their life who need care. Mm-hmm. And some of those parents or family members they're caring for as a result of things like fall and fracture.
Yeah.
So they're seeing the firsthand, impact of that. We have changes in job, we have the political scene, we have finances, we have the menopause transition, potentially affecting our sleep and our energy levels, and symptoms that get in the way of us doing the things that we know we want to do, but it's hard to do it. So we're moving less, and it's kind of a time for a lot of people that's a bit of a perfect storm. Mm-hmm. So with strength training, and you kind of mentioned this too, it can be overwhelming of like, how do I get started? Do I need to be in the gym 6 times a week? And I will hear people like, how do I lift 6 times a week? And I'm like, you don't,
Yes, please don't.
You could, if you wanted to be a bodybuilder and you were advanced and you're doing a body part split 6 times a week. But for most people, let's start at a realistic level.
Yeah.
And that might even be once a week to start. Mm-hmm. How do we start smaller and build up over time? So resistance training twice a week, getting a, relatively full body workout, doesn't have to be anything that's super overwhelming, but just we're getting the sense of what that feels like.
Yeah.
We're getting to know things like, how do I know that was a hard effort? Or how do I know I'm moving my body in a way that's efficient? We don't want to be too scared to move, but we also don't want to be reckless. So do I need guidance from a coach? Do I need a program to guide me? And I can tell you for my midlife clients, the last thing they want to have to think about
is programming.
Is what I'm going to do when I get to the gym. Because if I can't close that loop and I'm trying to think about it myself, and I'm also like, pick the kid up at the end of the school day, I've got to send that bill out for payment. I have to make sure to check in with my mom, like all of these things. My boss is on my case for stuff. We're just balancing a lot. And if there's anything that's going to fall to the wayside, it's going to be the stuff that takes too much decision-making in the moment. So having even a simple program, even if you're a beginner, or even if you can get in for a few classes with a trainer, you're going to be set up at the beginning for more success so that you do have a better shot of keeping going. Because that's what matters, right? We keep going with strength training. We adapt it to our needs, but we're looking at the big picture because it is so beneficial, not just for physical movement through space, but how we handle blood sugar in the body and how insulin sensitive we are. There's benefits for cognitive health in terms of exercise and strength training for mood, right? It goes above and beyond. And it is also not just about sport, which I happen to really love, and that's my own bias, but I have a client who sent me a picture, and it was a picture of her trunk. And I thought, why is she sending me a picture of her trunk? This is so weird. And she said, I lifted the 40-pound bag of cat litter and carried it from the store to my trunk and from my trunk to my house. And I didn't need anybody to help me.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's freedom. That's independence, right? Absolutely. Quality of life, those sorts of things day to day. Yeah. So I think that's what I would summarize as my, TED Talk on that. I work with a lot of women who are pretty far advanced along in their strength training, and I've been lifting for 15 years, but at the base of it all is like, how do we help people get started and find ways to keep going and not conceptualize it as like a seasonal, I'm going to do this because I'll say something on that in a second, but like a seasonal thing that I'm going to like do once a year and then I'm going to stop, I'm going to do it for a couple months. Right. Extrinsic reasons for starting an exercise program can be a very common entry point for people. But at some point, if you want to make it something you do more consistently, it's like, how do I move past that? Just like I'm doing it for someone else and think about, why am I doing it for me? I think that's really powerful.
Yeah. On that note, I want to ask you, because I know over the years, this has come up so much in conversations with clients, that I just don't enjoy strength training. I just don't enjoy being at the gym, right? And you and I both know that finding joy in the process is a massive piece of continuing the process.
Yeah.
And so what would your nuggets be to somebody who is maybe rumbling on that level, that they just genuinely don't enjoy it?
Yeah. A couple things on a conceptual level, and this kind of ties in with what I just mentioned about extrinsic motivators. Yeah. We tend to think that is either extrinsic or intrinsic, that those are the only two options. And so extrinsic is my doctor told me to exercise, so I'm doing it because my doctor told me, as an example.
Yeah.
Intrinsic is like, I love the feeling of moving my body. Mm-hmm. I am definitely in that other camp, I'm further along, but people tend to think, well, I'm not there, so I'm kind of stuck.
Yeah.
And I hate doing this because I'm doing it for someone else or some reason that doesn't resonate with me. Mm-hmm. So if we can develop a sense of, and there are multiple steps along the spectrum between extrinsic and intrinsic motivators.
Sure.
But the two that tie back to what I talked about earlier are things that resonate with the type of person we want to become. Mm-hmm. So do I want to become a fitter person? Do I want to become a runner? Do I want to become someone who is more fit in my day to day, or I'm someone who lifts weights? Or my values, more values driven, and how lifting weights affords me the opportunity to do more of what's valuable to me in my life. And contextualizing that is very, very powerful. So that's what I would say on a conceptual level. On a practical level, I would want to know, what does the program look like? If you're like, I hate lifting weights, and you're in there for 3 hours and you don't have the time and you constantly feel like you just can't finish and it's not working for you, we can find you another program that's better aligned to your goals.
Yes.
Is it the environment? And we know how important environment is for behavior change. Mm-hmm. If it's a place where you don't feel safe or welcome, or you're constantly fighting for equipment, maybe there's a different space that we can find, we can help you find that is more peaceful, or you feel safer, or you feel is more convenient for you. Some people love working out at home. Yeah. I have a lot of people who work out at home. Some people absolutely cannot stand it because they're like, I'll just go sit on my couch.
I get very distracted when I work out at home.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we have equipment here at the house. My husband uses it because he works from home. I lift outside the house. I like to go to a place, and that's my place. And I make the appointment with myself every week. I know the days I'm going to lift, and I go and do the thing. Yes. The style of training. So, for example, some people get introduced to resistance training and actually picking up weights in the context of something like a circuit class. Yes. And over time, they become more cardiovascularly fit through that. But oftentimes, it's like the rest is too short. Maybe we see results at first because we have that effect. We have we're untrained and now we're a little bit trained and we see some progress, but now we want more. So we're feeling like the modality of training doesn't quite fit the goals. So maybe we need a program that separates my lifting from my cardio. Mm-hmm. Or I always feel completely drained and terrible after I train. And we look at your training program and it's very high volume, and maybe you have sensitive joints and it's irritating the crap out of your joints. Well, can we put you on a lower volume program? Yeah. So I would want to know, I would be super curious, what are the things about the training that specifically you don't like? Yeah. And then is there
I just want to stress really quickly before we go on that I think this is such a important point to drive home with listeners, that the value of working with a coach or a trainer for a period of time is, yes, the programming itself, because you mentioned that earlier, not having to do that mental work. Mm-hmm. But also being able to have someone ask these kind of pointed questions to make sure that this isn't just like a 21-day or a 12-week thing, right? That we're really building into your life a practice of strength training. And so, I'm super excited about, telling people more about your work, because I think that is, you're such a good resource for that. And also, like, people, your coach checks your form and can give you a lot of information about nutrition. Like, there's just so many benefits. And working with a coach doesn't have to be a forever thing, but it is something that can absolutely ignite your process and your practice in ways that nothing else can.
100%. And I would say, there's definitely a proportion of what I'm doing when I'm coaching people that I'm watching their videos of their deadlifts, or I'm asking, hey, how many reps do you feel like you had in the tank there? If you feel good next week, what do you think about going up by X number of pounds? Those sorts of things. Yeah. But most of the conversations I'm having are around making fitness practices, exercise a more consistent part of their life.
I love that.
Or working through obstacles and challenges. Yeah. So I was mentioning one of my clients, her mom fell and broke her hip, and unfortunately eventually passed away from her injury, and she had to go back to the East Coast and help take care of mom and be there in hospice and all of these things. And we were talking through, she was like, I feel pressure that I had to get to the gym. And I was like, so we talked through those sorts of things. Yeah. And ultimately helping people to ride the wave, I think, of when life comes at you. And you're going to have times where things feel really smooth sailing and feel easy. And then you're going to have times where the bottom drops out. And it's like, yes, you might take time away, but how can we get you back sooner than if you were left on your own to feel like, I messed this up and I ruined everything. And it's like, no, you didn't. Like, what's the gentlest entry we can have you come back to? And, those sorts of things. It's like troubleshooting life and all of the things that come along, and being there to listen.
Yes.
Being there to also spot other things. So a lot of clients having things like pelvic floor dysfunction, and I'll see in their notes like, oops, didn't jump today because didn't want to pee in my, workout shorts. And I was like, so we ask questions, right? Hey, tell me more about that. Like, what's your experience been? And I have had a couple of clients who have gone eventually to pelvic floor PT because I picked that up in their notes.
Yeah.
And they're like, I'm doing so much better.
Yes.
I didn't know I could exercise without leaking urine, and now I am, and I feel so much more confident. And so that's the quality of life stuff, or the quality of not just exercise, but of how physical fitness and how movement can benefit someone in their life. And they're not in the back of their head worried about, am I going to leak today when I do this thing and I'm at the gym and I'm going to get embarrassed and now I'm thinking about that thing, or it just ends up being something I want to avoid. So yeah, it's really working with the whole person. And I think that that's one of the benefits of coaching, or even a program on some level, is like, can you talk to somebody who understands, who's going to hear you out, who's going to encourage you? And I think a lot of times, unfortunately, and I've posted about this before, people don't want to be made to feel bad, guilty, or shameful because they didn't work out. That's not what we're here for. I know that's not how you do things, but the fitness industry, unfortunately, has garnered itself a bit of a poor reputation in some of those cases where people are afraid they don't want to be made to feel bad. So,
well, and I think people have been sort of conditioned to believe that consistency is like always the same effort and the same dose, right?
Yeah,
the same.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's so not what it is.
No.
So, really great. Okay, I'm going to pivot a little bit because I want to get into some knowledge from you around nutrition, because women especially, I think that we have been sold a really false bill of goods in terms of how to fuel the human body, or how to take care of the human body on a nutritional level.
Yeah.
So what if you could give a woman maybe like 3 big pointers around nutrition at midlife, what would those things be?
Yeah. If you are active and, you've got some kind of a performance goal, I think that's kind of how I would come at it, because that's the world I'm in.
Yeah.
But it's important that we're relatively, we've got a good match between our energy, or our activity levels and our energy inputs. So if we're really active, we're exercising quite frequently, we are aiming for performance goals, whether that's building muscle or improving our run times or whatever it is like we need some degree of matching up between our energy intake, how much we're eating, and how much energy our body is putting out. And for so long, the narrative is just like, eat as little as possible, be as skinny as you can. And in the performance world, especially, this is a really bad deal, because we increase our risk for things like low energy availability, of course, poor performance. Like, we can have real actual health impacts to underfueling chronically for periods of time. And so, we want to have a better match between those things. And I would say on the flip side, it's quite possible that if you have other things happening, like maybe you have menopause symptoms that impact your sleep and your energy levels are super low, it's hard to work out, you need support in that area. It's really important to think about, has my activity level changed, and then has my nutrition intake changed to sort of, again, be more in line with that. And I think that's sometimes those two things I see they're widely mismatched with women in this age group, because we've either been through like all of the crazy diets, the 90s, and like stick thin supermodel chic, and then low rise jeans, and like the whole, like, we've been through it all. It's been kind of wild. So we have all this diet culture history and things, and just be smaller, and like you'll be better, and you'll be faster, and you'll be more valuable. And then that's playing in our minds. And then on the flip side, we're really struggling to cope with some of these changes overall that can happen in midlife. And sometimes we don't have the awareness, or we're not able to spot, like, where are there places that I could bring my energy intake and how much I'm eating kind of more in line with my current activity levels.
Yeah.
And so I think that those are two big areas that are really impactful. I would say of course, everybody's like, she's going to say protein.
Yeah. Well,
I know.
mean,
I know. Like, but yeah, it's like a realistic amount of protein intake, especially if we're more active and we are trying to build muscle tissue. We still need the stimulus of lifting. Don't think that we can just, protein our way to more muscle if we're not training. We really need both. But the protein that we do have is going to help, keep us feeling fuller for longer. It's going to help repair our muscle tissue and other tissues of our body, not just muscle. So getting a realistic protein intake that you can maintain, I think, is important. A lot of times people will calculate and they're like, oh my God, how am I supposed to eat 200 grams of protein a day?
Increasing by 80 grams overnight.
Yeah. It's not practical. So just kind of an honest assessment of that. And shooting, I would say in the performance crowd, for most people is like shooting for a daily total that's realistic for you, not stressing out about exactly how much you're getting post-workout and like at the end of the day, the most important thing with that protein intake is getting a daily realistic target or total that's going to support your goals that you have there. And then the third thing I would say would be fiber. Again, there people are like, oh God, fiber. But fiber intake around this time of life, especially we know fiber is so important for health. It can lower disease risk. It can help feed the gut microbiome, although we need a lot more research in that area. But we have a sense that like, if we can get more fiber for most people, and if we're not getting it, increase it little by little, right? Yeah. Keep an eye on our hydration. But we tend to eat better quality foods when we try to include more fiber as well. So can we get more fiber in our diet? And, side note, as things like constipation can increase with age and straining can really impact the pelvic floor. Yeah. That can be one that could be a side benefit as well. So fiber intake. And then I would also say the last one would be not trying to eat perfectly, because we have people that are like, okay, so I have to eat like on point and I can never deviate and I can never eat any food that I like the taste of. Or they'll say, but you focus on fuel. So shouldn't I just eat all, quote unquote, like bodybuilder foods? And the answer is no. Food is more than fuel. Yes. That aspect's important, especially if we have performance goals. But we want to think about food as cultural experiences, it's travel, it's connection, it's social. Yeah. It's part of our ethnicity or our culture. Food is fun, food is tasty, right? So we don't want to eat like a robot. We have to also enjoy what we're doing if we're going to keep it going for a long period of time. So looking for ways to incorporate the things that we enjoy. Yeah. Is part of it. We're not here to suck all the fun out of your life.
Yeah, please don't, because it won't bode well for your overall health. That's for sure.
Definitely not.
Okay, let's talk briefly about recovery, because I think this is another area where, yes, at midlife, of course, we have hormones like, sometimes a little or massively disrupting sleep. Yeah. But I also think that it's a phase of life that we enter, and we've built some really strange patterns around sleep. Like maybe we've kind of thought of it as a luxury, or we just haven't prioritized it. Yeah. And especially in the realm of what you work on, which is helping people to improve performance. Mm-hmm. Just that whole concept of the harder you train, the harder you rest. That's a hard one for people to wrap their head around.
It is. Well, when we were 20 and we were drinking Red Bull and sleeping for 3 hours or 4 hours and going to class or staying up all night, we could do that. We had a larger capacity.
Yes.
Most people, I would say, not universal, but I would say most people had more capacity to, F around and find out at that point. And now we have a lot of things vying for our capacity. Yeah. It's like everything that is stressful and will drain our battery or our tank. And we just have a lot more things going out. And so we have to think about what are we putting in terms of recovery, even in terms of just physical training. Mm-hmm. We don't see the benefit of the training when we're actually doing the training. Mm-hmm. We have to, especially in the case of strength training, we're, in a sense, breaking those tissues down a little bit in order to then recover from them and see the benefit of that, which we call adaptation, but we would call probably gains or muscle or, the benefit, the thing that we want from our training. Yeah. So we have to think about rest and recovery. And I think a lot of us, especially who are highly motivated or like, just that like go-getter mentality, or we've had to be, and this is another side note as women, maybe you've single parented, or you've had to be somebody who's wearing a lot of hats. You're doing more of the unpaid labor in your household, or you're doing a lot of emotional labor for the people in your life. Like you have a lot of things outgoing and, a lot of capacity being drained. And a lot of people have kind of learned like that's the normal and have had to survive that way, or it's just kind of become part of how they do things.
Yeah.
But then we kind of get to midlife and we struggle a little bit to recover. We're not sleeping as well. We're finding it harder to do some of these basics because we have so many things that are vying for our attention. And so we start to fall behind on things like recovery, but sometimes continue what we're used to, right? It's the routine, it's the habits that we have. And we're like, I had to push myself really hard. And the only way I'm going to get better and build more muscle or improve my endurance is just by absolutely smashing myself. And then I'm not able to keep up with the recovery. So I'm going to continue to push even harder because I'm not seeing good improvement. So we get into a bit of that loop. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's tough. So thinking about for training, like how many hard sessions a week are you training? Mm-hmm. What can you sprinkle in the in-between that still means you're moving, but lower intensity? So maybe it's moderate intensity that you're doing cardio, or maybe it's an active recovery day, or those sorts of things. Like strength training, 2 or 3 legitimately hard sessions in a row, especially their full body, is by the second and third sessions, you probably aren't going to be able to perform as well in that session, right? You're not gonna be able to train as well. So think about if I took a day off in between of my full body workouts, how do I feel when I have that day off and I get in the next time and I'm like, oh, okay, well, I can actually progress the weights a little bit, or I can do a few more reps instead of always feeling completely.
You actually feel recovered, right?
You're just like barely feeling like you're surviving, know? And I think that's a big one. A lot of people will say, I can't finish the workout. And it's a sensible workout. I'm just completely out of gas. Yeah. That might be a case where we have to adjust the intensity. We have to give you another rest or recovery day in between. Moderate your hard and easy days, flow your hard and easy days throughout the week, I think is a great one for women in this age group where we're just like, things are kind of all over the place and chaotic. Is like, instead of trying to do 3 hard days in a row, it's like, can we go hard, easy, hard? Mm-hmm. Or something like hard, easy, moderate, right? Where we're riding the wave a little bit and we're giving ourselves a chance to more fully recover before we're going to ask a lot of our body. And we're just not making ourselves exhausted for the sake of getting exhausted.
Yeah. Absolutely. And if you look at rhythms of the body, right, the heart rate, the nervous system, it all oscillates. And so it makes perfect sense that we would get the most out of our training by oscillating our training as well. Yeah. Okay. I want to make sure I get to this before we get out of here. But I've long believed that our health and well-being is really an exercise of expansion, right? Expanding the way we live and what we're able to take on. And I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast that I definitely see you as an example of that. And most recently, you picking up the drums, which is a new skill set for you. I mean, it's so great. I love that you do it so publicly. Because you did really from the outset, right? Like as soon as you started practicing, you kind of started doing some posts about it. And anyway, I would love you to speak a little bit to that in terms of like what inspired you to learn the skill set of drums and how have you stuck with it? Because inevitably, like everyone, you're a beginner. And so we definitely have rough days.
Yeah. I think that there is a lot to be said about being a beginner. There's a lot of benefits to being a beginner. And some people are like, oh my God, being a beginner sucks and I feel terrible and there's nothing good about this. I'm not good at anything yet. And I think, again, looking at the other side of that coin and thinking, what are the great things about becoming a beginner? Well, if I practice consistently enough, I'm going to see big progress.
Yeah.
I'm going to probably make a lot of progress in a fairly short period of time. I'm going to learn new skills, right? I'm challenging my brain, all sorts of things that you can benefit from by being a beginner.
Yeah.
And the reason I picked up drums is because when I was in my early 20s, I wanted to learn the guitar. And I took lessons.
Yeah.
And I was forced to read sheet music, and I cannot read sheet music, like regular sheet music, not tablature, which is just kind of a map. So I was forced to read sheet music, couldn't read the sheet music, eventually gave up and quit. I wanted to play Stairway to Heaven on my guitar and just thought, oh, like the dream is over. And then last year I was watching YouTube. I got a video on my feed. It was something about a jazz drummer learns to play Nirvana. And I was like, ooh, I love Nirvana. This is my era. So I watched it and I just thought, I just kept watching more and more drum videos after that. And I thought, okay, well, why not give it a try? I haven't tried something new in a while.
Yeah.
And I want to see if I can do it. And I would say the biggest thing that's allowed me to stick with it is that within 3 weeks of getting sticks in the mail, I decided to find a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had already started to develop bad habits on my own.
Yep.
And he was able to help me correct them pretty quickly. And then I had some structure. So I think, if you can have someone to help you, even if you're not going in person, I liked the idea at the time of going and like actually getting to play on real equipment and stuff. But yeah, somebody to guide your progress, what you're working on. They have a lot of people that do it virtually too. So that's cool. Over Zoom, you can take instrument lessons and things like that. And that's how I've stuck with it. I've also tried to make it really fun. And I have had times, to be quite honest, where I was like, I feel like crying because I feel like I'm not getting this. Especially toward the beginning, there were some things that just really were difficult, but I just decided I'm going to keep going. And I really tried to also include things that I found were a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So the things for me that were a lot of fun were like playing songs from my favorite music from the 90s.
Yeah.
Playing grunge songs, or I'm learning Stairway to Heaven just on the drums this time, finding ways that I could learn. So I learn off drum tab, there's no actual melodic sheet music for drums, but it's a map of the drum kit. And that really works with my brain.
Perfect.
And
so you were willing to like adapt to your learning style.
Yeah. I just tried to seek out what would help me. And I also really, if I were left to my own devices, I was doing an online course and they had great content, but there was a lesson on counting subdivisions of music. And I thought, I'm going to skip that. I don't like this, quarter notes and eighth notes and 16th notes. And when I went to the first lesson, my drum teacher was like, and we're going to learn how to count eighth notes. And I was like, oh, crap.
Here we go.
Here we go. But if you think about it, drumming is all about timekeeping. And so I'm glad he forced me to do that fundamental. Like, it was part of the curriculum. And he said, you've got to learn this. This is very fundamental.
Yes.
And so when left to my own devices, I probably would have skipped it because it was a little bit uncomfortable for me. But having a foundation, so having good foundational skills.
Yes.
Super important.
Yes.
But yeah, having fun with it as well. And I decided early on that I was going to just share. I don't always share things that sound really great.
Yeah.
And I do that because I think that's important, that we don't always show the perfect stuff. Mm-hmm. Because then other people who are like, oh, I was thinking about that, like, look, well, but she's so good, and like, I'll suck. And no, I suck at a lot of things too. So, but it's fine. Like you keep track of your progress, and with drumming, you have to record it. It's the easiest way to see your progress. And so I think that has a lot of application to lifting.
Well, I was just going to say, like, everything you've mentioned, right? Like being a beginner for people who are just getting into strength training, like they have to have that attitude of embracing the beginner mindset, able to ask for help, like seeking out help, someone who can help you to avoid the pitfalls and not build bad habits, having fun, building foundation, like a strong foundation. So this isn't just a temporary thing, but it's a long lasting thing.
Yeah.
I think that it's such a good example of that. And yeah, I love that you shared that. And it's great that I asked you about it because it's just, it brings home so many things we've talked about here.
Yeah.
Okay. So for listeners who want to find out more about you and your work, and I know you have a free offer, but you also have your podcast. And so I want you to tell them all the things.
Yeah. So my podcast is Fuel Your Strength. And that's anywhere you can find podcasts. So we talk about performance nutrition, lifting, recovery, all of those things. I have my free week of lifting, so you can check that out if that's interesting for you. There's also a bunch of information in there, like evidence-based things about lifting and training in our 40s and beyond. And then you can find me at stephgaudreau.com is kind of the hub for everything that I do. And I'm most active on Instagram. So yeah, come hang out, say that you saw this podcast and would love to know what you thought.
Definitely. And for listeners, all those links will be on the page where this is housed on graceandgrit.com. And yeah, Steph, you're awesome. I enjoy time with you, and I just love watching you from afar. And I'm really glad we had this conversation.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Grace and Grit podcast. It is time to mend the fabric of the female health story. And it starts with you taking radical responsibility for your own self-care. You are worth the effort. And with a little grace and grit, anything is possible.